welcome back to my read-along of A Tale of Stars and Shadow. We're up to chapter 3, so I'm going to jump right in. Alrighty. The door to the First Shield's room stood open. After straightening her black tunic and settling the leather weapons belt at her waist, Talyn knocked and entered. First Shield Lark Ceannar sat behind his desk, an expression of intense focus tightening his rough-edged features as he studied the parchment in front of him. His left hand hovered over it, blue ink purling on the tip of the quill he was holding, an instant away from dripping down onto the page. Behind him hung the Dumnorix house sigil, the crossed swords on a black background wreathed in amber starlight and flame. Ceannar wasn't nobility. He'd joined the Kingshield from the Calumnian army and risen through the ranks over many years, earning his place at the top. She'd seen him on occasion at palace functions, but they'd officially met only once, the day she'd been formally accepted into the Kingshield. She had little to form a solid impression of him outside the gossip of her fellow guards, that he was a good administrator, but blunt and uncompromising. He was also rumoured to have been one of the finest fighters the Kingshield had ever had. "Sir?" she prompted him when it became obvious he hadn't heard her knock. Ceannar glanced up and waved her silently to one of the chairs before his desk. She closed the door and sat, trying not to shift uncomfortably as his attention returned to the parchment. Several minutes passed, and 3 drops of the ink, she counted, before he finally scratched something on the page and put it aside. Then he looked up. Faded brown eyes focused on her face, his look giving her the impression she had his entire attention, whatever the parchment contained now completely forgotten. "I read through your file earlier, Guard Dynan. You've been with us just over a year now?" "Yes, sir," she nodded. "Your father travelled here as a sailor when he was a young man, then stayed after meeting your mother?" "Yes, sir. He fell in love with our country as much as my mother. Mithranar remained somewhat of an exotic mystery to most of those in Firthland and the Twin Thrones, particularly as it was home to the winged folk, humans with wings that allowed them to fly. Only the sailors who plied their ships back and forth with trading goods knew much about them. No member of the winged folk had yet to step foot in either capital of Ryathel or Port Lochley that she was aware of. But Ceannar already knew all this. It was starting to feel like he was easing into something, and he wouldn't be doing that if it was something good. She tried not to tense. "Your record is impressive. You were an Aimsier rider from age 12, startlingly young even for a Dumnorix, before leaving the north at 16 to join the Callinan." His gaze remained unwaveringly on hers. "You have been described without exception as one of the most skilled Callinan to ever wear the green cloak. Why leave all that to join the Kingshield?" The question was delivered bluntly. Despite herself, she couldn't hold that gaze. Her eyes dropped to her lap. "I'm sure you already know that I lost my partner, sir." There was a moment of silence, but his blunt tone didn't change when he spoke again. "I am aware. What happened was tragic. But why leave and join the Kingshield? Was it because of your connections with the royal family?" That was exactly why, but not in the way Ceannar thought, and she struggled for a satisfactory answer that wouldn't give away what she was hiding from everyone. "Not really, sir. My mother formally removed herself from court and any political influence when she chose to marry my father. I was raised far from the court, and I don't have any formal status here." "But you've had an audience with the king a number of times since your first arrival in Ryathel. You even attended the hunt with His Majesty and Lord Ariar yesterday." "Yes, sir." She shifted, uncertain of where this questioning was heading. "Political influence or no, they are family, and now that I am living in Ryathel, I like to spend time with them." Ceannar nodded as if her words answered something, though she couldn't imagine what. He leaned back in his chair and folded his arms over his chest. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows, and a long scar was visible snaking up from his left wrist to elbow. "I have a question for you, Guard Dynan." "Yes, sir?" she asked warily. "How does one of the most skilled Callinan fighters of her generation break her wrist, sparring against a Kingshield Aimsier recruit with no background in weapon skills apart from his bow?" It hit her like a blow. All the warming up, the going over her history, it had all been to lower her guard, but she hadn't expected that it would be for this question. She froze, trying to come up with something to say. Don't even think about lying to me. Do that and you're out, Dumnorix family member or not." His voice and expression were merciless, giving her no wriggle room and no time to think. Reluctant admiration filled her, despite the panic beating at her bones. "I made a mistake, slipped and fell badly. It happens." That was technically true. You fell badly on purpose and you know it. Quit hiding from yourself, Talyn. She firmly pushed the voice away. Ceannar was still watching, clearly not satisfied by her answer, and waiting for a better one. She desperately tried to think of something to say that would satisfy him without revealing how broken she was. It was a lapse of concentration. It happens sometimes when I remember what happened. A muscle ticked in his jaw. You won't be part of the posting assignments going out next week, Guard Dynan. She shot up in her chair, astonishing herself at the indignance sweeping through her. Why not, sir? You're being given a different assignment. He held her gaze. I am deploying you to Mithranar. The Condor Crown has requested a Kingshield guard be sent to Mithranar to assist in building their soldiers' capability in guarding and close protection. Thick silence fell as Talyn processed Ceannar's words and then replayed them over in her mind to make sure she was hearing him properly. Then she shifted in her chair, trying to keep the confusion from her face. Why do they want a Kingshield guard now? And anyway, sir, I'm a new Kingshield without any active guard experience. Wouldn't it be best to send a... Let me be clear on something. That merciless gaze was back. I'm not giving you a choice here. You accept this assignment and all it entails right now before we go any further, or I have a conversation with your uncle about my doubts regarding your injury and fitness for duty. Her lip curled. You're blackmailing me. Something flashed in his eyes, so briefly she barely caught it, but it might have been unease. On the contrary, I'm your superior officer and I'm giving you an order. Do you accept? Yes. She spoke without needing to think about it. She couldn't have Arthane find out about her. The idea of it terrified her more than anything else, because it would make her brokenness real. If others knew, she wasn't sure she'd ever come back from it. And that prospect was scarier than agreeing to go to a distant country without knowing why or what for. Good. But the unease flashed over his face again, stronger this time. Before I go on, our discussion here tonight must remain within this room. I need your assurances on that. Talyn glanced around, several things becoming clear. Why he'd summoned her at night, why his clerk hadn't been outside when she arrived. I've sworn my oath to the Kingshield, sir. I would never betray that, she frowned. Speaking of, why is this request from Mithranar even being considered? The Kingshield only protect Dumnaric's family members. Ceannar's gaze focused on her even more tightly, and he paused again as if reconsidering a decision already made. The youngest Condor prince, Cuinn of Condor, is a member of the Dumnaric's family. Her mouth opened, closed. She tried not to shift in her chair, failed. Her astonishment deepened, the unreality of the conversation making her wonder if she wasn't dreaming. There was a Dumnaric's in the Mithranar royal family? The First Shield read the look on her face, saw her struggle to form words, and continued. I accept this comes as entirely unexpected news, Guard Dynan. Nobody outside this room is aware of Prince Cuin's Dumnaric's heritage. There are good reasons for this, none of which I intend to go into with you. Suffice to say, my initial intention was to deny the Mithranar request. This was also the King's decision. The Kingshield are not to be farmed out to other armies. Our specialist expertise is for the benefit of the Twin Thrones only. Talyn cleared her throat. So my uncle doesn't know about Prince Cuinn? Only I know, and all previous First Shields. Ceannar gave her a look. And now you. Wonderful. Then your decision to deny the request makes sense, sir. What didn't make sense was him telling her any of this. That's where it gets tricky. He sat back in his chair, idly rubbing at the scar on his arm. When the request was discussed at our regular council meeting with the King, the Caledon First Blade asked that the King and I change our minds. She asked that we agree to what Mithranar was asking for and to send someone to gather information on their behalf. The Caledon appear to have recently developed a significant interest in a Mithranar individual called the Shadowhawk. The First Blade pointed out that the request from Mithranar offered the perfect cover for someone to go over there and investigate. Sir, She reached up and rubbed at her forehead, trying to make sense of the myriad of questions that wanted to spill out of her. At least it was now clear why she'd been chosen for this, and why Ceannar was sending her despite his doubts about her. He was being pressured into it from outside. Not only that, but as ex-Caledon she had the skills they needed for this. Who is the Shadowhawk? The First Blade indicated that he's a criminal, one whose activities have them worried. I'm afraid I don't know much more than that. His expressionless face told her nothing either. What could the Caledon have that would make them so worried about a Mithranar criminal they'd risk conducting a secret investigation in a foreign country? Ooh, something odd is happening here, Tal. The voice, Sari's voice, she finally admitted to herself, whispered through her mind, and she pushed it aside, determinedly focusing her attention on Ceannar as he spoke again. You will go to Mithranar officially as a serving Kingshield officer, Ceannar continued. As far as the King and First Blade are concerned, you are being loaned out by me to the Callinan to investigate the Shadowhawk on their behalf. Sari's voice wasn't wrong. None of this made sense. Sir, I'm sorry, but I left the Callinan. I'm not one of them anymore. I feel uncomfortable. It's this or a conversation with your uncle, Guard Dynan, he reiterated sharply. Silence filled the room for a moment. Anger curled under her fear. She'd never liked being backed into a corner, and now she was essentially putting herself there. Self-contempt and fear swirled inside her stomach in a bitter mix. Prince Cuinn is Queen Serana's youngest son. He spoke when she didn't protest any further. I assume he'll already have some sort of guard, so you'll do your best to join that unit, or at least be involved in their training. He flashed her an unexpected smile. The First Blade now owes me quite a large favour without realising her request provides the perfect reason for me to send a Kingshield to Mithranar. She cleared her throat. What about Queen Serana's other sons? Won't they need a Kingshield detail? Cuin's relation to the Denarix line comes from his father. He has a different father from his other siblings. She blinked. Sir, you don't think the Queen might suspect I'm there for other purposes than just training their soldiers? Especially if you and the King have agreed to her request without asking for anything in return. The first glimmer of approval appeared on his face. Your uncle has considered that. You are being provided to Queen Serana in return for a shipment of Azurdia, which is setting off for Port Lochley as we speak. A handsome return indeed. Azurdia was crucial to any sort of explosive material used in a range of purposes from mining to war. And it wasn't cheap. However, that wasn't the only problem she could foresee. If I'm to be officially training Mithranar soldiers in close protection skills to guard the royal family, I'm not sure what opportunity I'll have to investigate a criminal. In my experience, criminals don't operate in the same sphere as royal families. I pointed out as much to the First Blade, Ceannar shrugged. She pointed out that being in Mithranar at all was a damn sight better than investigating from Ryathel. Yes, sir. She nodded acknowledgement of that. What about the fact I'm one of the Denarix? Azurdia aside, you don't think the Mithranans might take exception, if not suspect my true purpose, if they found out a member of the royal family has been sent to train their soldiers? There's no reason for them to find out unless you tell them. Most of the Twin Thrones doesn't even know who you are since your mother left court before you were even born, Ceannar stood. As is usual for a Kingshield posting, you'll be deployed to Mithranar for a year. I can promise you now that following this assignment, you'll be reassigned here in the city if that's what you wish. Talyn's mind reeled. Away for a year, away from everything familiar to her, away from her Denarix family. Maybe it would be good to travel so far away from all the memories, from the gaping hole inside her. Guard Dynan? Sir? That heavy gaze was on her again, leaving her no room to look away. I was never a Callinan, but I have some understanding of the depth and nature of a Callinan partnership bond. He paused, that gaze on her the sharpest it had been all meeting. It shifted to her left wrist, then back to her eyes, flaying her to the bone. Tell me that you can still be what you once were. The First Blade pushed hard for this, but tell me I'm not making a mistake, sending you alone on such a complex mission without support. Her fingers curled on the chair, everything in her wanting to scream aloud that she was terrified the answer to his question was no. I'll be fine, sir. She spoke with a confidence she didn't feel. Guilt swamped her at what amounted to a lie, followed quickly by fear. If she was wrong and something happened to Prince Cuinn, more than just her secret would be out. He nodded, releasing her. You've been booked on a ship leaving tomorrow evening. I apologize for the haste. Good luck, Guard Dynan. Yes, sir. She turned for the door. One more thing. His voice stopped her. Sir? Prince Cuinn likely knows nothing about his Denarix heritage. Ceannar paused. In fact, his blood may not be obvious to you in the same way I understand it is with your relatives here. His Denarix heritage comes from a distant branch of the family tree that has been separate from yours for generations. Her eyebrows shot skyward without her permission. A distant branch not connected to the one ruling the Twin Thrones? How is that possible? Ceannar ignored her response and continued. Cuin's line have never had a Kingshield guard because it has always been safer that nobody knew of their existence. Cuinn is the last remaining of that line. You are to do everything in your power to keep him from learning it. And before you ask any more questions, don't. Remember that nobody outside this room is ever to know what I've just told you. He returned to sit by his desk. Dismissed, Guard Dynan. Yes, sir. After a beat, and still not quite understanding any of what she'd just been told, Talyn turned and walked out the door. After her conversation with Ceannar, Talyn toyed briefly with the idea of going to the palace to inform her uncle of her assignment. In the end, she decided against it. Ceannar had heavily implied that the King and First Blade knew she was the one fulfilling the Callinan request. No, her uncle knew already, and he'd left Ceannar to tell her. Sighing, she entered her room and sat down to write a long letter to her parents. She wouldn't even have time to travel north and see them before she left. Her mother wasn't going to be happy. She wondered what her father would think about her being sent to his homeland. He had never spoken much about Mithranar, but growing up, she sometimes caught him staring up towards the north, a yearning in his eyes she hadn't understood until she was older. She'd asked him about it once, and he'd told her with a smile that he was sometimes homesick. They have such beautiful music in Mithranar, baby girl, he'd said as he picked her up and cuddled her to his chest. You just miss the music, Dar? Well, I had friends there too. Do you want to go back? He'd laughed and swung her around. Not in your life. Why would I ever want to leave my girl? She wondered what it was her father had yearned for, what he'd been missing, what had made him so sad. Maybe she'd find out. Tarkos appeared in her doorway late the next morning. She already had most of her things packed, and a single bulging bag sat beside the door. What's going on? He smiled a greeting. Talyn straightened from tidying her cot and tucked strands of black hair behind her ears. I was called into the First Shield's office last night. I've been given an assignment. I see. He came closer, reached out to take one of her hands. She fought the urge to shake it off, not because she disliked his touch, but because he was too close, his smile too intimate. How do you feel about that? It's about time, she said with false confidence. But the assignment isn't part of the regular posting cycle. He's sending me to Mithranar. Tarkos' smile faltered. Genuine puzzlement lit up his hazel eyes. Mithranar? That doesn't make any sense, unless... Is one of your family travelling there? No. Queen Serana requested a Kingshield to help train her soldiers in close protection. While Tarkos was her lover, he was also a Firthlander prince, and she knew without asking Ceannar wouldn't want her divulging the true reasons for her assignment. She's paying through the nose in Iserdia for it, too. He let out a breath, a frown creasing his forehead. Talyn, you left the Callanan, and I'm one of the few people who understand why. Travelling so far away from your friends and your family to an unfamiliar place, you should tell your uncle you don't want to go. She squeezed his hand before giving in the urge to break away. They're my orders. I don't want anyone treating me specially just because I'm related to the king, she said, and I particularly can't afford anyone thinking I'm backing out because I'm not up to it. That's a legitimate concern, despite how furiously you deny it. You've been out of action for over a year, he said stubbornly. They're my orders, she repeated, stung. Tarkos had never pushed her about what had happened. His quiet steadiness was what drew her to him. He was smart too, and like her, he felt things deeply, more deeply than he ever let on to the world. That bond made her feel safe with him, something she'd needed after what had happened. And it's not like I've been sitting around doing nothing for the past year. I've trained every single day. I'll make sure those Mithranar soldiers are taught well. He sighed, then moved forward to wrap his arms around her. I hate the idea of you leaving. You know I only worry about you because I care. Ceannar did promise me I would be reassigned here when I returned, and it's only for a year, she murmured against his chest. Well, that's a little better, a warm smile. She stepped out of the hug, taking his hand and tugging him over to sit on the cot beside her. You'll write to me, won't you? As often as I can, he promised, hazel eyes searching hers. I don't want to lose this, what we have, all right? She nodded. I'll be back before you know it. I've seen one of the winged folk once, you know. A smile tugged at his mouth, and his hand reached up to cup her cheek and draw her closer. Really? She breathed into his kiss, moving to tug the hem of his shirt from his breeches. Some official visit to Summation when I was young. He deepened the kiss, voice turning husky. Are your roommates going to come back? Not for at least another full term. They're at drill. She grazed her fingers across his ribs where she knew he was ticklish, winning a laugh from him, needing to lighten his momentary gravity. Wretch, he muttered, loosening the ties on her vest. You love it, she murmured as she pushed him down on the cot. And that's the end of chapter 3. Again, I'll pause here for a couple of seconds before I start my author commentary. So if you haven't read the book yet and you want to avoid spoilers, now is the time to tune out. If you do tune out now, please consider liking and subscribing below so you get updated when the next chapter comes out, which will be soon because I can't wait to get into chapter 4. Okay. Okay, so final opportunity to jump out. If you haven't read the book before and you don't want to hear any spoilers, I'm about to jump into my author commentary after reading chapter 3. So what have we got here? This was a bit of a chess match, wasn't it? A conversation between the first shield of the Kingshield and Talyn in that meeting. He clearly sees right through her. He's no idiot, and he's put the pieces together rather easily. But he's also kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, right? Because he's got his doubts about her capability, but he's also got this secret that no one else knows, and he has a kind of a duty as the head of the Kingshield to protect all of Dumnoric's blood, including Prince Cuinn in Mithranar. And the request from the Caledon gives him that perfect opportunity to actually have some proper protection in place for a member of the Dumnoric's family, which is his overall duty. And Talyn's sitting there panicking in an absolute panic because she knows that he knows, and she's just so worried about everyone finding out. She's kind of in this really tricky place emotionally, and he isn't really helping much. And at the same time, she's completely astonished and taken aback by the fact that there's this mysterious Dumnoric's family member living in Mithranar. And this is the first time we touch on the kind of the backstory. So for those of you who don't already know, I've mentioned it before, but there is a full series written several generations before A Tale of Stars and Shadow, which kind of is set in the time when the Twin Thrones, or talks about how the Twin Thrones actually came to be, how the Dumnoric's line came to be, some old connections with Mithranar, and explains why there is this mysterious line of the family in Mithranar. That series is written, but still quite rough. I do have plans to publish that at some point, so that story will be there. But there's a lot of that kind of referencing back to that happens throughout this series, which will hopefully, when I do get around to publishing it, kind of make the whole kind of universe a bit richer. But yeah, so Talyn's in a bit of a jam. She's agreed to this assignment, even though she's has absolutely no confidence that she can carry this out, and it's going to be pretty intense and pretty complicated, doing two things at once. But she's in now, and Mark's sending her off. And then we have her farewell scene with Tarkos. He obviously was presented at the beginning of the series as a rather nice guy, but my skin crawled every time I wrote these scenes with him, and you can see I was kind of planting the seeds right at the beginning. He's very keen for her to be in Ryathel, to be close to the king, because that's what he kind of wants for his plan, right? He wants to be marrying a powerful royal, so that will help his claim for what he's planning in in Firthland. And then I dropped in that tiny reference about having met a winged folk before, and that's of course Azralan. And how that friendship and connection was formed many years ago and started the whole kind of journey that we're on now in A Tale of Stars and Shadow. And I just love kind of dropping those little hints in there, even early on, that you can kind of draw back to and see how all those things link together. So yeah, if you've got any more questions on this chapter, please drop them in the comments below. I'd be more than happy to answer. And if there are a lot of questions, I can make another video. I'm having a lot of fun with this. I can't wait to get into chapter 4. So I will see you soon. Have a great day.